What's going on, everybody, and welcome on into the Doghouse. We have got Pittsburgh Steelers Doghouse edition, our second in 3 weeks, and it's going to be another good time. He joined me just 2 short weeks ago, and it wound up being good luck for the Browns. So I couldn't not invite him back. Mark Bergin from the Believe in Steelers podcast is going to join me tonight to preview Sunday's Browns and Steelers game in Pittsburgh. The Browns. We're going to talk about it for a minute because we got about 15 minutes before Mark gets here. We'll talk about that game last night a little bit. Browns and Broncos, a wild Monday night football game. The Steelers coming off a really impressive victory against a Cincinnati Bengals team that is having Browns-like struggles in trying to figure out where they are at and where they are going. The Pittsburgh Steelers scored at will against the Bengals. I think they didn't have their first punt until like the fourth quarter in that game. And so the Steelers, with a redemption story after they lost to the Browns in that snow globe game in Cleveland on Thursday Night Football, they beat the Bengals. The Browns fall to the Denver Broncos, and so it's another interesting game. Anytime Pittsburgh and Cleveland match up, you know there's going to be fireworks, and you know we'll see how things go. Pittsburgh awfully sad about that last loss to the Browns. A lot of whining, a lot of complaining. So we'll see how Pittsburgh translates that over into the game with the Browns here this week. In the meantime, just before we get rolling here, make sure you are subscribed and tuned in to Everything Orange and Brown Report. The OBR is Cleveland's oldest and largest independent Cleveland Browns coverage site. Nobody brings you Browns coverage like the OBR. So make sure you get over to the OBR, theobr.com, hit subscribe. Make sure you are at the socials at the OBR on Twitter or X, Facebook, Blue Sky, all the socials. And again, here, whether you're watching us on YouTube or Twitch, hit follow, hit subscribe, give us a like. It's all very much appreciated. So again, Mark Bergin's going to come on to preview the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers with me in about 10 minutes or so. Mark will be on. After this show, again, we're going to do what we did a couple weeks ago. It's just the way my schedule works with Mark. So thank you for being adaptable to the change in the schedule. I know we usually go at 7 o'clock, and this is a little bit later. But after tonight's show, we're going to jump right into Garage Beers, where me and the guys are going to talk more about the Browns. We're going to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes and the game, and we got a lot to get off our chest there. And we got a great special guest coming there, Tony Pesta, who covers the Cavaliers for Fear the Sword and Right Down Euclid. He'll be on talking Cavaliers with us as the Cavs are in battle tonight against the Washington Wizards. Right now, that game at the half, Cavs are up 18. So come talk about that with us as well. That's Garage Beers happening at 9 o'clock right after this show. So let's talk. And you guys are already jumping into the comments. I appreciate that. I love the optimism from DeAndre Black here. It says 2025 is redemption. Go Browns. Kevin and AB will fix this. Yeah. You would usually be surprised when Kevin Stefanski's teams would lose 2 games in a row, because until this year, that didn't happen very frequently. It would be a little bit also surprising to see Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and this front office have 2 seasons like this in a row. If that happens, look out. So I do want to talk about the game last night, that Monday Night Football game, and I want to start with this. God, it's so much more fun. It's so much more fun when you have a guy that can throw the football in the system that Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey want to run, like Jameis Winston. I know it didn't go their way, and I know Jameis, he made 2 rough throws. That one in the end zone, that one that got picked off in the end zone was terrible. That reminded me of that Ohio State-Michigan game where Michigan's quarterback just threw the ball right to Jack Sawyer in the end zone. Same concept, same play. Jameis just got no air under the ball and threw it right to the defensive player for Denver. I also think the throw on the pick 6 where the defender caught it, fell on his back, and then took off down the sideline, it was just late, and it was behind Elijah Moore. I mean, it was all kinds of bad right there. But 2 pick 6s, and yet I leave that game feeling like we know what the Browns need to be a competitive, good football team. The outing we saw from Jameis Winston last night was a lot of what we saw out of Joe Flacco last year. right? 500 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Jameis was spraying the ball all over the field. It reminded me of that Texans game last year, not the bad one, but the good one, where Joe Flacco was just in rhythm with Amari Cooper over and over and over again, and they were just connecting everywhere. That was Jameis and Jerry Jeudy last night. How good, by the way, how good must that have felt for Jerry Jeudy to go off 235 yards and a touchdown against a city and a fan base that really wanted him gone. And for some reasons that you maybe don't blame them for, but I also don't think there's a lot of love lost there between Jerry Jeudy and the Denver Broncos and their fans. So Jerry Jeudy goes off. It was just David Njoku's out there making plays. Elijah Moore's out there making plays. Offensively, I think when we overanalyze, something gets lost in the simplicity of this situation, doesn't it? I think when we overanalyze where we think the Browns are going to go, it loses the fact that the answer is simple. It is not complex. You got to find a guy that understands how to drop back and throw the football in timing and in rhythm. And frankly, I'll take a quarterback that's going to make some mistakes every once in a while. Now, listen, 2 pick sixes, you're not going to overcome that. I don't know that you're going to overcome that in any game. I don't know that you're ever going to overcome 2 pick sixes. Can you overcome picks? Yes. If one of those picks doesn't go for a touchdown, are the Browns still right in that game? Yes. 2 pick sixes you can't do. So Jameis deserves his share of the blame, and he took it, man. I love watching him talk. He stood up there at that podium after that game, and he took it. And sometimes I think Jameis is a little over the top and a little bit, he makes me laugh, but I also don't know if I was in the locker room with him. Sometimes I feel like I'd be like, shut up, Jameis. But when he stands up at that podium and says, man, he's all about his faith, and I'm not the biggest religion guy on the planet, but when he talks about it, it just means so much to him. You can tell it's coming from a place of sincerity. And when he made that comment, like, I'm just praying for God to help me stop throwing pick sixes. Yeah, he's up there taking accountability. He understands that really that game is on him, but it's not entirely on him. But I don't want to be doom and gloom after that loss. A Monday Night Football game. That's a Denver Broncos defense that was dominating everybody. They have been one of the top defenses in the NFL all season long. And they did play well in certain areas, right? Like Bonito, geez, oh, Pete, man, that dude was everywhere. But against the run, Denver was good. I think the Cleveland Browns running game right now needs the entire way and philosophy and how they do things in the running game needs a complete overhaul. And it needs it for next year. But they got to figure out, they are so predictable when they run the football. They are so predictable that you know when they're going to run the ball. I mean, how many times do we have to watch an incomplete pass on first down and then a run? It's like you could just call it. You could just sit in your chair, watch the game, and go, oh, incomplete on 1st and 10. They're going to run it on 2nd down. And they do all the time. Some of their formations are so obvious in how they're going to operate that run that I think they need to get back to some of the things that made them successful in the running game over the last several years. But they need to get back to a little bit of misdirection, a little bit of trying to catch the defense off guard. Because right now, nobody's fooled with the Cleveland Browns are trying to run the football. Nobody's fooled. It's not Nick Chubb's fault. It's not Jerome Ford's fault. I thought Jerome Ford looked pretty darn good in that game last night. None of their fault. That run game, the way it's set up, not great. So they got to get that fixed. But again, overall point here, after what we watched with number 4 and the first part of this season, it's just so clear and evident that he's not the answer. And you can win football games with Jameis Winston. Now, when he's throwing 2 pick sixes, that's going to be hard. But man, one or two things goes a little differently in that game, and the Cleveland Browns are winning that game. I think Jameis will tell you he might have thrown for 500 yards in that game, but he should have had more. I mean, how about him completely overshooting a wide open Jerry Jeudy for what should have been his first touchdown of the game, and then another one that came later that he hit him on, but Jameis missed a couple throws that he should have hit. And then the mistakes, I mean, part of that is bad luck, man. Most of the time when you throw an interception, there's a receiver in the area that can make a play, or it happens over the middle, or it's on a tip play, and you can get the guy down and give your defense a chance to make a stop. But man, 2 times where a guy catches the ball with just nothing but open field in front of him, there's a little bit of bad luck to that as well. But I really enjoyed the game. I liked the fight out of the Browns. I think the 2 things that the Cleveland Browns need to be really prioritizing outside of how are we proceeding in quarterback, that's the obvious one, is defensively, why have you gone from number 1 to number 24 in the league? They are the 24th ranked defense in the league. And last night, Denver was able to run the ball a little bit. They didn't run for a ton of yards, but they ran the ball all right. And especially when Bo Nix dropped back and rolled out specifically to his right, he was dicing up the Browns. I mean, there were a couple drives. I think the Browns defense played pretty well in that game, considering they only gave up 28 points to the 41 that the Broncos actually scored. And they were put in some pretty tough situations. A terrible punt by Bohorquez. Again, quick turnovers, quick 3 and outs. But they got to figure out. There were 2 or 3 drives in that game by the Denver Broncos that were, it was a hot knife through butter. They just marched down the field, and whether it was Mims or whether it was Sutton, you had guys just running wide open all by themselves. And they got to figure that out. I don't know. Yeah. Broken Arrow says it. Browns had the Broncos 3rd and 11 at the 7-yard line. And they give up a 93-yard bomb. Like, that can't happen. It can't happen. And I know the guys came out, and I think that was the play the guys came out and said, well, it wasn't a busted coverage. And maybe they're right, but you didn't make a play either. And I believe if that's the right one, you could tell me, Broken Arrow. I believe if that's the right play, that's the play Denzel Ward tried to undercut Mims and try to make a play on the football. And he was a little bit late on the undercut, and the ball somehow just found its way to Mims, and he was gone. You can't be letting a guy catch the ball with nobody in front of him. Like, sometimes, and I love that. I think Denzel Ward has played so well. He was so good in that game for the most part yesterday. That interception was incredible. But I do think sometimes you maybe tone down the aggressiveness on going for that interception and go, hey, I just got to bring this guy down. Like, this guy's got to come down. It's me and him out here and nobody else. So I got to get this guy down. I thought for sure. You're saying it wasn't 21. I thought for sure. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought for sure it was Denzel Ward that came over from, well, the right side of the play as it was going down the field and tried to intercept the pass. He made a great play on the ball, but he just missed it. Anyways, defensively, they got to get it figured out. I was a little disappointed in the pass rush. And to be honest with you, and you heard Benjamin Albright last week when he was talking to Brad Ward here on the Doghouse say, Bo Nix struggles when you pressure him. And I understand the philosophy of the Cleveland Browns is rush 4 guys, drop 7, and let your guys out there and make a play, but crowd downfield. But I was like pleading. I was pleading in that game last night. If you're gonna pick a game to go heavy on the blitz, if you're gonna pick a game to go blitz happy, I don't think you should do it all the time. I think there is a formula that works a lot of the times with the Cleveland Browns. But if you're gonna have a game where you're gonna go blitz happy, maybe do it against Bo Nix because he's bad under pressure. And he's been bad against man coverage this year, and he's been bad under pressure. And he had a lot of time to throw the ball last night. And they just didn't get the coverage on him. So again, excuse me, I've been talking all day. I'm trying not to lose my voice. I come away from that game having a great time watching it. It was much more enjoyable than most of the games we've watched the Cleveland Browns play this year. And you see how they can be good. A couple of mistakes here and there, and that's a different outcome in that game. And it was a blast to watch. So, speaking of a blast to watch, the last time the Cleveland Browns played their upcoming opponent was on Thursday Night Football. It was a blizzard snow globe game in Cleveland. And the Cleveland Browns came to play in that game. Myles Garrett with 3 first-half sacks. Offensively, they did what they needed to do to win. And in the end of the game, Hail Mary was knocked down. George Pickens was crying. And the Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday Night Football. And they get another crack at them. And you better believe the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be licking their chops. But Browns are one up. So we're going to talk about it. And right now, I see my guest has jumped in. He is from the Believe Network's Steelers podcast, and you saw him on here with me just a couple short weeks ago. I'm going to bring him in right now. It's Mark Bergin. Mark, you're a good luck charm. It's so good to see you back.
Mike, thanks for the intro. And I know that we've got Hard Knocks later this night, but I tell you what, if football doesn't work out between these two teams, just put George Pickens and Greg Newsome in a steel cage match, and the winner wins the game. What say you?
You know what? I'm 100% in. And I think that might be the worst fight in the history of fighting.
Yeah, it's I don't really know. George Pickens has like a play, if not every game, every other game, where it's like, what is he doing on this play? And he's been mercurial. Like there's times where he's very, very volatile. You can't bench him ever, even though he got penalized twice against the Bengals. But it's like, you wonder if you play with that fire, if that comes back and haunts the Steelers. And he's 23 years old, still a young player, but it's like, dude, figure it out and channel that emotion in a way that's productive for your team, not in a way that's going to hurt your team.
Mark, real quick, they go straight elimination chamber match with Pickens and Newsome. How many slaps happen in that? It's a lot of slaps.
Well, let's set the over under what at 5.5. I don't know.
It'd be a lot of slaps.
Let me just put it this way. I would take the under if we're playing in blizzard conditions like we had in week 12. It was aesthetically beautiful. Like, honestly, the snow football, I don't care what level it is. I know we just had it in Buffalo in the Bills game against the 49ers, but like it could be CFL. I don't care. Just if it's snowing and football is being played, it's must-watch television, point blank, period.
I think there's a lot of fun to it. I have been on the record as very pro-dome. I'm a pro-dome guy. I want them to build the dome. I want to go to a football.
Are you talking for Cleveland specifically?
Yeah,
I understand that.
And
you can get big time, and you can get big time events like, say, Super Bowls and whatnot too, beyond just the 8 or 9 regular season games, the 8 or 9 Saturdays each fall. I understand that from aspects beyond just football specifically. I understand that, but the elements.
You know what? I'm going to be football specific for a minute.
Okay.
Yes, I would love to go put my jacket on in December, go to a Cleveland Browns game, and then take my jacket off and sit there and enjoy the football game. You can't be tougher than weather. Everybody's like, oh, you got to toughen up. You can't be tougher than cold. You can't.
It builds character. It builds character, though, to put hair on your chest. You know, it's just.
I'm 40.
It's like a
built
in the AFC North, though, in all honesty, because all 4 are outdoor stadiums. It's the style of play. We hear about the physicality of AFC North football, and they're knocking pads, and it's just like it's a double chin strap game. You're losing that element if you do that, but.
Well, it hasn't worked for us for 25 years, Mark. So let's build the dome and see what happens. Maybe that's the change we need.
Do they still? I know they used to call the old municipal stadium the Mistake on the Lake. Do they call it? I know it's not First Energy anymore. Is it Huntington Bank Field? Does it still have that nickname?
It's Huntington Bank Field. No, the nickname disappeared a long time ago.
That was the old municipal stadium, though. There's the baseball stadium, though, right?
It was baseball and football. It was dual purpose.
Yeah.
it was 80,000 seats of just pure cavernous, stinky goodness that I miss all the time. But no, the only nickname we got now, there's the local comedian Mike Polk that called it the Factory of Sadness several years ago, and that kind of stuck. And well, it's been that way. It's been that way.
Yeah.
So, Mark,
Yeah.
you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
Because the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, I actually drove through Cincinnati Sunday morning, saw everybody out tailgating, getting ready for that game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cincinnati Bengals, and man, we've talked about the disappointment that we have here in our Cleveland Browns this year, but there's quite a few of those kind of teams this year that people peg to be pretty good teams that are not very good football teams. And the Cincinnati Bengals, they were the popular pick to win the division.
Yeah.
And they have been terrible. Talk about what you saw in that game, Mark, because really offensively, Cincinnati did what they do. They played good offense. But they couldn't stop a team of my grandmother's, and she's been gone since 2015.
You said it. The game played out exactly how I expected it to. And the Steelers get 510 yards of offense, and this was the highest scoring game in the history between the Steelers and the Bengals. And the big question coming in was, well, can Trey Hendrickson at least get enough of a pass rush up front to at least be somewhat competent defensively? And it was like, I don't know what to expect from Dan Moore Jr. this coming week, because in week 12 against the Browns, he allowed 3 first-half sacks against Myles Garrett. Garrett dominated. He was the better edge rusher in that specific game. I know a lot's made between the rivalry of Garrett and TJ Watt. Garrett was better in week 12, just straight up. And this past week, Dan Moore Jr. really neutralized Trey Hendrickson up front. And the offense, like Russell Wilson, has unlocked something we haven't seen since the Killer Bees with Ben Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown in terms of the high scoring output. It's really the styles of play. Mike Tomlin's lack of recent playoff success, what I've always argued is, well, look at who his quarterbacks have been. Late career Ben Roethlisberger,
Yep.
Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, all of these players that Duck Hodges, an undrafted rookie who couldn't even start for his CFL team.
Does Mason Rudolph still have that dent in his head, by the way?
He might, but it's that's hilarious. but that's been something with Wilson, that he's just untapped with this offense, where the thing that I took away from the game is, if you want to go shootout, the Steelers can now hang in terms of winning in different manners, where it's always been with the Steelers of like low scoring game, one possession game, win the turnover battle, win time of possession, win the line of scrimmage, physicality. And it was like, wait a second, they can put up some points on a scoreboard, and they overcame a deficit to then rally to get a lead before half. It was 27-21 at halftime, and the Steelers had more than 300 yards of offense. And I'm like, wait a second, this is just halftime. This isn't the full game. It's a different style of Steelers football I haven't seen since I started covering the Steelers in the 2019 season. It predates my coverage with the Steelers, but this is just an offense that's been unlocked with Russell Wilson, Arthur Smith and company. And again, you're right, though. It comes with the caveat of the Bengals aren't very good. Come season's end, if I had to predict, I think Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, I think he's going to be looking for a job. I think he's going to be the scapegoat, the odd man out, because this Bengals team coming into the year, over-under was 10.5 wins, and they've already hit the under, and we're going into week 14. I'll land there.
Yeah. So heading into this week, your Pittsburgh Steelers over there coming off a good, solid win against the Bengals, and then they get good news as it was reported that, and this is not good news for Browns fans, it was reported that Alex Highsmith should be back and ready to play. He's been out for a while now, and he unlocks a lot for that Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I will say this. I think more than any year before, the Steelers were able to kind of eat the loss of Highsmith, because Nick Herbig's been he was the best pass rusher for the Steelers in the Thursday night game. Nick Herbig,
Yes,
he was
yes.
disruptive in that game.
In week 12, the Browns did a really nice job of neutralizing TJ Watt. That's
Yeah.
not an understatement at all. And Herbig's been great with his opportunities. But you move Highsmith back into the starting lineup. He's got more weight than Herbig off the edge. He lines up over teams opposing left tackles, both Highsmith and Herbig. And then Watt lines up over in a team's opposing right tackle. But Highsmith's got a little bit more weight, so he can play the running game a little bit better. And they make a great duo. Now, how you can use Herbig now is kind of more in that pinch hitter role, where situational down in distances where you know that it's going to be a passing play, and he can use that speed off the edge in a race to the quarterback between he and TJ Watt. And Nick Herbig in his second year has been absolutely terrific in his opportunities, whether it's been in a starting role or in limited opportunities when he has to get into the mix when, say, TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith needs a blow.
Well, and we know, and I don't want to give these guys too much credit because Pittsburgh, but we know that it really has felt over the last couple of years specifically that when Highsmith is on the field, it unlocks things for TJ Watt. Because Highsmith's a guy that draws attention, and you can't just say we're going to focus on TJ Watt because Highsmith will kill you all game long. And so that when those two are out on the field together, the numbers specifically for TJ Watt have been much better.
Yeah, it's a race to the quarterback, and it's something that before Highsmith came into the picture, it's what he had with Bud Dupree. They franchise tagged Bud Dupree, but it didn't want to work out a long-term deal with him. Dupree goes to get his money with other teams, and then now he's bounced around the league because when you go from being the Robin to a Batman, I mean, you saw it in Cleveland where I know Jadeveon Clowney's been a good pass rusher, but he's a Robin and not a Batman. Myles Garrett is a Batman. TJ Watt is a Batman. How you can play off of guys like that. And really the guy up front who is having another great season, even in his mid 30s, is Cameron Hayward. And that starts up front. A gap, B gap at the line of scrimmage with him. Because if you don't win the A gap and B gap, really what they do off the edge is really irrelevant. I know that's something you have experience with the Browns as well of, well, right. What better way to neutralize Myles Garrett to where you can just go right through the teeth of a defense, through the base of a defense, and it starts with the ground up. So, but yeah, I mean, Highsmith, the duo he has with TJ Watt, I mean, it's a race to the quarterback, and it also allows you to rush four to where you can run some stunts, you can do some things up front, but you can drop 7 defenders and really hone in on the passing game, still get a decent pass rush, and you can drop 7. You're not forced to just rely on the blitz to get pressure on an opposing quarterback.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I think we see it with Myles Garrett a little bit, especially when that defensive line is healthy and you got guys like Alex Wright who had a great start to the season. But when that defensive line is healthy and you had Okoronkwo and Zadarius Smith, and you get into obvious passing situations. It'll be interesting to see if the Steelers, with Highsmith healthy, with Herbig, and with Watt, you get into obvious passing situations. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Steelers moving Watt around that defensive line a little bit, letting him attack from different angles, because we see that a lot with Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
In obvious passing situations, all of a sudden Garrett's looking right at the center, and you could see the center shaking.
I saw it on one snap this past week against the Bengals where they flipped him and they had Watt line up over the opposing team's left tackle over the Bengals left tackle, but typically he stays on the left side of the defense on the right side of the offense. So, and the reason being is most quarterbacks are right-handed. So if you can get TJ Watt right up in the face of an opposing quarterback, he's like a magnet to the football. And it's almost like he's got instincts that defensive backs have of, okay, most edge rushers, you're like, well, how good is his hands? TJ Watt is the exception to that rule. His turnover creation's just been terrific. And then, 2 sacks this past week against Burrow, had a strip sack as well. And that's really a big key in the Steelers' win, was winning the turnover battle, because Cincinnati was moving the ball and it was a shootout style game, but you win the turnover battle 3-1. And that's really a big difference in this past weekend's game in the win over the Bengals.
Mark, the Browns coming off last night's Monday Night Football game in which, they exploded offensively. I mean, Jameis Winston throws for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. they actually got not a ton of movement. Everybody will jump down my throat because I know Browns fans want us to run the ball 40 times a game.
Yeah.
But not how that was going to go. And again, I don't think their run creation, their run schemes have been very good this year, and they've got to get that fixed. But offensively, Jerry Jeudy goes for 235 yards. David Njoku's making plays. Elijah Moore's making plays. Yeah. You got some other guys out there. Jamari Thrash is out there making catches. And, it just was a game where offensively they just got so much going. But you just talked about the turnover battle. Well, Jameis Winston throws 2 pick sixes in that game, and 41-28. There's your difference in that game. It really felt like that was a game for the Browns to win, but Jameis just won too many mistakes.
Prime Jameis.
They let it move it a little bit too easily as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the full Jameis Winston experience where he throws for 6 touchdowns and 2 of them are to the other team. I tell you what, though, Mike Tomlin talked with reporters today, and the first guy he mentioned was David Njoku and how he's a big target, particularly in the red zone matchup problem. He's developed into a really nice player for the Browns. Just size and speed to where if it's a linebacker, he's going to be able to be a better athlete. And then if it's a DB, just that size, good luck dealing with that. And then Jerry Jeudy's had 2 really nice games back-to-back weeks. Got the better part of Joey Porter Jr. in the matchup on that Thursday night game in week 12. And then last night's game in Monday Night Football to where he's starting to emerge into his own. Joey Porter Jr., 2 rougher games because I thought Jeudy got the better of him on that Thursday night game. And then 6 penalties for Joey Porter Jr. this past week against Cincinnati. Penalized, I think it was 56 yards of penalties. Now, again, he's going up against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Mike Tomlin called T. Higgins, I think he called him a goon, which is high praise. It's a compliment of T. Higgins. In that, we were talking about the duo of TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Well, that receiving duo over in Cincinnati is as good as there is in the league. So you want to see Joey Porter Jr. in his second year shore things up there. He plays with his hands, though. He's a very physical corner. But, I mean, if he's going to be a marked man by other referees, it's something I'm watching. But having Joey Porter Jr. as your quote-unquote lockdown corner is something that you need to be able to run the defense that the Steelers run. So if that comes with some penalties, another thing Mike Tomlin said today too is, hey, when we're playing Shaquille O'Neal, when he's talking about T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, we're going to take our fouls. So, sometimes illegal use of the hands or defensive pass interference might be better than saying allowing an easy touchdown. So I think it's something they'll get shored up. But the Browns, the 2 guys that Tomlin mentioned right off the top, Njoku was first and then Jerry Jeudy was second. And Jeudy really kind of coming into his own. He wanted to get some revenge against his former team as well in the Denver Broncos. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and I want to say this. Jerry Jeudy got off to a tough start in his Browns career. I think he had like 230 total yards receiving through 8 weeks. That was the Deshaun Watson situation. Since Jameis Winston has taken over, Jerry Jeudy is now 5th in the league in receiving. Yeah. And the vast majority of that has happened over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So he's developed a connection with Jameis Winston. He is tied with CeeDee Lamb for receiving yards this season. And so that connection, Jerry Jeudy has emerged into a total playmaker for the Browns.
Can we talk a little bit about Winston? And I mean, I know that the flack with him, the volatility, the 30-30 season he had with the Buccaneers, he goes to the Saints and is actually looking pretty good with New Orleans before he got hurt. Now he's getting another opportunity. It's just the volatility to where if he could eliminate the turnovers and knowing when to take those risks, the talent is there. I think that is really, really clear. And there's a reason he was the number 1 pick. Tomlin was saying today, quote, I had an unbelievable arm talent. And then sometimes just goofy. And I'm not just talking about him in front of a microphone or off the field or anything. What the hell was that spinner triple option play that he had? He might have invented a brand new play, a brand new offensive scheme. And it almost worked.
Almost. We had a lot of things that almost worked, Mark. We had a lot of things that almost worked. Yeah. No, listen, again, I'm in the boat now. I think the quarterback of the future for the Cleveland Browns is not on the football team. Sign me up for another couple of years of Jameis Winston. I'm up. Right.
Do you want to
If you were
go?
a
Do you want
Browns
to go
fan,
draft then, or do you want to go trade like in the off season? Okay, so you try to re-up Winston on a team friendly deal. Let's go down this rabbit hole. What's the next plan of action after you say, "Hey, Jameis, team friendly deal," and you're likely going to be the starter? Because I don't think Watson's going to be ready for Week 1. What next, Mike?
no, Watson better never play ever again. And
Well,
there's some interesting things that happened. Nathan Zagura, who's the radio color analyst for the Browns, who does a show from Browns headquarters, basically came out today on his show and said, probably not going to see Jameis Winston again for the Cleveland Browns in not those exact words, but pretty close to that.
so where's that coming from? Is that coming from Jimmy Haslam? Is that coming from Andrew Berry?
Hopefully it's coming from all of them, Mark. Hopefully maybe it's coming from Deshaun himself. You can just sit on the bench, collect your paycheck next year. You don't even have to come in.
Okay, so you're talking Watson, not Winston.
Oh, did I say Winston?
No, I just want to. Yeah, okay. So
all right, I said Winston. I'm sorry, I meant Watson.
Okay, I got you there. So,
but yes, I think
so. Let's give you the keys to the Cadillac then. So, off season comes around. Do you want to bring Winston back or some other veteran? Like, how do you foresee this playing out? Even if you don't get the guy who's really going to be the guy, say this off season.
Let's learn a little bit from last year, because as much as people want to compare and contrast, Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco are like the same guy. It's like watching the same guy out there. They are
One's a little bit younger.
What's that?
One's a little bit younger.
Well, no, but the way they play, right? They throw
Sure.
the ball around. They spread it around. They are not afraid to fit it into tight spaces. They understand timing in an offense, and they make a ton of mistakes. But you can win with guys like that. You can win a lot of football. You saw it with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had how many pick sixes did he have for the Browns? He was on pace to have a 50 interception season for the Browns if he would have played the whole season last year. He turned the ball over like crazy, but man, did he make big plays too. And that's what Jameis is.
Yeah, and I'm okay with some turnovers here and there because it's calculated risk. And if it's an interception 50 yards down the field, it's essentially an arm punt.
But Mark, you look at the Browns schedule and you got to be realistic about it. I don't think the Browns are going to be easy for anybody to beat at this point. But
I love your optimism. I love this.
The Steelers, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bengals again. Like it's a tough road for the Cleveland Browns the rest of the way. So the draft pick is probably going to be fairly decent. So yeah, if I'm the Browns, that's where I'm looking.
But you got to also factor in, like, let's just do this off the top of your head. I was trying to figure this out the other day because the Steelers have 2 quarterbacks only under contract for the season, and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. All the other teams that are going to need quarterbacks. You got the Browns, probably the Panthers. I mean, maybe Bryce Young another year, but I'd want to bring in somebody. The Jaguars, the Jets, the Raiders. I'm sure I'm missing a handful of others. I'm probably missing 2 or 3 other teams, but just off the top of my head, I mean, there's going to be some stiff competition of just who can you go get, who's available. And that's a fear I have with the Steelers of like, I don't think you're going to be able to bring back both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And the way Wilson's playing right now, you have to be like, I mean, if you win a playoff game with Russell Wilson, you've got to run it back with him for at least another year. You have to.
Well, one thing, and this may get me killed to say this because I know the Deshaun Watson trade has been a disaster. But one thing that I will give them credit for is they realized finally, after 20 years of Browns football, they realized that getting the quarterback is the paramount most important thing. And we could sit here and talk about edge rushers, and we could sit here and talk about defensive backs and wide receivers and offensive linemen. But getting the quarterback is the utmost important paramount thing. They took a swing on a player that they should not have taken a swing on because every red flag on the planet was there.
No.
But they took the swing anyways, and I don't fault them for that. So
the Saints and the Titans were the 2 other teams that I'd also throw on that list as well. But yeah, I'm with you with the quarterback. I mean, I saw it for years. I mean, they thought Kevin Colbert, the former Steelers GM, thought his parting gift to Pittsburgh was going to be Kenny Pickett is going to be, at the time, the logic was that Kenny Pickett was going to be the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, and Colbert was going to go off into the sunset and then maybe off into Canton.
Yeah, but that fake slide, though. That fake Kenny Pickett slide.
He didn't have the arm. Just It was amazing last year. The stat that I kept pointing to where Kenny Pickett had 6 touchdowns total throwing touchdown passes last year. Mitch Trubisky, the guy who he was replacing during his Pro Bowl season with the Bears, did that in 1 game. Believe that or not, as bad as Mitch Trubisky has been, did that in 1 game. So it's like when you talk about quarterback woes and just anemic offenses, I understand your pain, Mike. I really do.
So, Mark, we got to get this wrapped up, but I'm going to give you the word here. It's not going to be a weather game. It looks like it's going to be pretty nice in Pittsburgh. It looks like it's going to be decent, 50 degrees. So we're not worried about a snow globe in Pittsburgh on Sunday. The Browns, the Steelers, just 2 weeks after playing each other, going back at it. What did we learn from that first game, Mark? And what do you think?
Block Myles Garrett. Block Myles Garrett. Put 2, maybe 3 guys.
Take notes.
Like, just help Dan Moore Jr. out. There were some things made. Dan Moore Jr. is in the final year of his contract. I'm not going to fault him when he leaves Pittsburgh to go get his money. He's been healthy. He's been I'll say a decent starter. He's stayed healthy. But against Myles Garrett, it's like, I don't know what to expect, because this past weekend against Trey Hendrickson did nothing. But then the week before, it was like Myles Garrett has just wrecked this game. If I've learned anything, know where Myles Garrett is, know where 95 is. Just point blank. That's where I'm at.
So what do you think? What's your prediction for this game on Sunday?
Take Pittsburgh. Come on, Mike. I mean, your viewers will hate listening to this, but Pittsburgh losing twice. Look, they're 7-point favorites at home. You get to double-digit wins, and at this point, you're also fighting for home field advantage. It's not just the division that you're fighting for. Could you make moves on Buffalo? Kansas City they keep winning, but barely, by the skin of their teeth, maybe even by luck. So it's like, could you potentially get home field advantage? And it's like, that's what you're fighting for at this point. And look, I like Pittsburgh to bounce back. And I think there's still going to be a little bit of a sour taste in the Steelers' mouth coming off that Thursday night loss in the snow. And man, I wish we got that. It's just so aesthetically beautiful. I know it came with a loss, but that helped with the loss a little bit too. And look, when these two teams play too, you got to throw out the records in the division games. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but the Steelers came into that game on a 5-game winning streak. It kind of brought them back down to reality of, okay, let's hone in and buckle down on what actually needs to get done. I think they do the same thing. I think they buckle down and they end up splitting the season series. It seems like regardless of how these two teams fare throughout the course of any season, it seems like they always split. Yep. So I'll take the Steelers at home.
Denzel Ward, 2 interceptions, Myles Garrett, 5 sacks, and the Cleveland Browns win 34-11.
Okay.
34-11. Final score in Pittsburgh, and we watched the world burn. 2 losses to the Browns. You don't get to make the playoffs. You don't get to make the playoffs if that happens.
Mike, I'm going to go watch Hard Knocks now. I love it. I love it.
Oh, man. No, hey, listen, Mark, it's been a blast. I'm going to talk to you again soon.
Yeah.
But appreciate having you as a friend. Go make sure you follow Mark on Twitter or X at @MarkBergin_. Follow the Believe Network, the Believe in Steelers podcast. And again, if you want to know more about what the Steelers and their fans and everything are saying heading into this game, Mark's the guy to get you that info. So make sure you give him a follow. Mark, so good talking with you again. I feel like this is just a weekly thing at this point now with this schedule, but good luck to you. I hope your Steelers lose, and have fun watching Hard Knocks tonight.
Mike, thanks for having me, and hopefully we get that steel cage match. Pickens, Newsom, may the best man win. Good to see you, Mike.
Bye. See ya. Mark Bergin, Believe in Steelers podcast. Man, he's great. I love that dude. And fun to talk about the Browns and the Steelers and getting ready for that game. So I got to run. We got Garage Beer starting in literally a minute. So I got to run. I'm going to get Garage Beers going, but we're talking Browns, Buckeyes, Cavs with special guest Tony Pesta and so much more. So hang out. We're going to get that kick in right now, right here on the OBR streaming network. This has been the Doghouse. Again, special shout out to Mark Bergin. And I will see you next week for the Doghouse. And I will see you in just a couple of minutes for the Garage Beers podcast. Until then, cheers and go Browns, everybody.